What is up, everybody? Thanks for stopping into the Rocky Mountain EDC channel. Today we're going to be talking about knives that have stood the test of time and have been around for forever. And I think when we see these knives, if you can tell, traditional pocket knives, they evoke a sense of nostalgia and bring us back to distant memories of maybe our grandfathers or loved ones that cherished these tools for long times and have been passed down various generations. And that's kind of the topic of the video today. Is I want to look at 5 reasons why you should own a traditional pocket knife. Now, before I get into the 5 reasons, it's important to kind of define, what a traditional pocket knife is. I think for the most part, most people have a thought in their mind of what a traditional pocket knife is. It's usually non-locking, usually made with natural materials like bone or wood, and it has brass, nickel, silver, and very basic high carbon steels. I am kind of going to stretch a little bit on the traditional pocket knives to even something like the Buck 110 and traditional pocket knives that have locking mechanisms. We'll kind of talk about some of those features as well. But do know that it is kind of being stretched to some knives that, I think now would be classified as traditional, maybe 10, 20 years ago would not be classified as really traditional. So the first thing why you should own a traditional pocket knife is they're generally accepted among society and even among those that are not really knife users or people that kind of have a fear of knives and, possible intended uses, right? So they're generally accepted because they're not threatening. They've been around for a while. And I think that kind of nostalgia piece or that, standing up to the test of time piece, they've been shown and used for so long that they're not really threatening. They're not seen as something negative. Whereas a more modern pocket knife that has a black profile to it or has some fancy deployment mechanism, this might get a little bit of a different rate of acceptance and view compared to a traditional pocket knife. So they're generally accepted, typically seen as non-threatening. I mean, when you're pulling this up and you open it up with 2 hands, there's nothing that screams threatening. You're really representing something that is meant to be used as a tool. So that's always a nice thing in owning one of these. And also with that kind of general acceptance is a lot of traditional pocket knives, their 2-handed operation and lack of a lock, and typically in smaller stature with these knives, they are going to be much more widely available to use under various knife laws. So if you're in an area that has very heavy restrictions on knife carry laws or knife laws to own certain pocket knives, these are typically going to not have any issues with going against those laws. So that's one nice aspect. You can still carry a cutting tool to get your job done, but it's not really going to have any impact on the laws. The second reason is that there's a large variety. And just kind of looking at the table here, I have a bunch of different kind of traditional pocket knives. And this isn't obviously the full extent of the traditional pocket knives that are out there. There's tons. The variety is immense. There's different options in terms of the design, the blade pattern, blade shape, the handle materials, even whether or not you want a knife that has a single blade or, maybe multiple blades. There's just a lot of different options out there. And I think this provides really kind of another category in of itself, is that there's something out there for everyone in the traditional pocket knife kind of realm. And, I think this really defines the usability and the offering, that if you don't like the Buck 110 or if you don't like the Case Trapper, there's going to be some type of traditional pocket knife out there that meets your needs or that has the aesthetics that you're looking for. So I think the variety is one big reason to own a traditional pocket knife in of itself. The third reason you should own one is that really these traditional pocket knives teach you how to use a knife or any tool that has a cutting edge. And I'm kind of going to explain why that is. Obviously, you learn how to use a knife through using it, but I think with a lot of modern knives and having, robust locks or, all types of crazy safety features, right? You get a little careless in terms of how you're using your knife. If you have the assurance that the knife isn't going to fold on your hand, or when you're closing it or opening it, it's not going to hurt you as much, because we have these modern conveniences now where the ease of opening is really nice, and then there's a sure lock and there's easy closing ability. Traditional pocket knives, obviously, for not all of them, but most, you have to open it up with two hands, and it offers a non-locking mechanism. So it just has a back spring that keeps the blade kind of opened out. By knowing and using a traditional pocket knife, it teaches you to not be stupid when you're using your knife, right? When you're holding a knife, you always know there is a sharp object. I need to make sure my hand's out of the way. I need to use care when I'm opening and closing it, but also when I'm going in to cut an object or material, I know that I can't use this necessarily as a pry tool, right? It teaches you, and for those that are learning really how to kind of use a knife more so in their daily life, or maybe you're giving it to one of your children that's of a good age to give a pocket knife to, you can really learn how to safely use the knife, knowing in the back of your mind, this is not going to be locked out, right? So it teaches you kind of how to safely and correctly use a pocket knife. And I think that is something that, we kind of take for granted, is it teaches you how to be a safe and responsible knife user. The fourth reason is that a lot of these knives are very inexpensive, and they're also reliable. I mean, with the different varieties and patterns, if there is a pattern that you really like, you don't have to get a super expensive version of that pattern. For example, I have this case trapper, and I wouldn't say that this is the most expensive trapper you can get, but this is a little bit up there in price. And it's very beautiful in terms of the design. It has really good walk and talk. It has good snappy action. The blade holds an edge really nicely, right? So you have that price range, which I would say is more in a moderate price range, could be around $70 to $80. And then if you don't want to get that, but you still like the trapper design, you can get something that's a little bit more inexpensive, like this old timer gun stock trapper. And this one's going to go more about $20. And it's going to give you that same function and kind of aesthetic and look, and also the same types of blade styles and shapes that you are kind of looking for. Obviously, at a little bit more of a cheaper price, you're not going to get the really nice details and fit and finish, walk and talk. Maybe the materials don't look as good, but you have options in different price ranges. And I think that's in of itself a really good reason to own a traditional pocket knife. You don't have to break the bank just to get one. They can range between $10 to, up there in the really high $100 plus range, right? Like this Buck $379. This is a really simple, inexpensive, traditional single-bladed folding pocket knife. And you can have that. This is very, again, meeting all those other categories, non-threatening, and just really nice, kind of teaches you how to, with a weaker back spring, you're not going to be crazy with this knife. You're going to use it for very precise, thoughtful cutting tasks that you keep in the back of your mind. Another thing too is, a lot of these knives are reliable, and that kind of leads us to the last reason why you should own a traditional pocket knife, and that is that they're really able to stand up to the test of time. I know in terms of their popularity, and they've been around for a while, but also in terms of their integrity. And I think one of the best examples of that is this Case Stockman. Now, I restored this Case Stockman, and if you can tell, it's missing 2 other blades. I believe it's missing the sheep's foot and spay blade options on here, but it still has the clip point style blade here. And this style was actually from the 80s. This actual pocket knife model version here was from the 80s. And I found this in the woods in the dirt. And obviously it was in much worse shape when I found it, but I restored it. And for the most part, other than those 2 other blades that were beyond repair and rusted, this held up. The Delrin style material, the nickel silver, the brass, the pins, everything's held up to where after restoring something that, you know, might have been deemed not able to be functional again, is still functional. And, you know, I think to that point, a lot of these knives get passed on to generation. They really do hold up to a lot of use, and they maintain their beautiful design. And, you know, something a lot of people like, maybe don't like, is that they build up character over time. You know, maybe the brass starts to get a patina, or you know, it gets little nicks, and you see wear on the blade, right? But they still hold up, and they're still very functional. I mean, honestly, you could pick one of these and it'll probably last you a lifetime. And with that also brings us to our last reason, is that they're easy to maintain. You know, with modern knives, obviously there is components that allow you to customize it, and you can take the knife apart and you can also maintain it that way. But there is a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. If you miss a screw, if you know, something happens with the lock bar, you know, you're going to be having to get those parts or having to repair the knife. And as far as traditional pocket knives, the maintenance is super easy because they are pinned construction usually. I mean, none of these knives on here are really made to be taken apart. They're made to withstand their integrity by their very simple and solid design. So they're very easy to maintain. You're not going to really have to worry about one of these pins coming out and then having to find a new pin to put it in to keep the knife functional, right? And also, because there's no real locking component other than that back spring, and honestly, the back spring is going to withstand, it's going to hold up for a very long time, is, you know, you can sharpen this and apply any lubricant that you need very easily, and then you're back in working order. So that simplistic design and kind of old school design also makes them very easy to maintain. There's really not much that can go wrong when it comes to traditional pocket knives holding up their integrity, which is a really good reason to get a traditional pocket knife. So that's my 5 reasons why everyone should own a traditional pocket knife. I think that they're nostalgic. They offer a little something for everyone. And honestly, I think for me, there's something about, you know, having one of these traditional pocket knives that just makes me feel a little bit like I'm going back to a different time, a simpler time. And I think that a lot of people really enjoy having something that's functional, useful, simple, but also beautiful at the same time. So thanks for watching, guys. If you stuck through the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the Rocky Mountain EDC channel. Thanks.